A nearly new Airbus can be stripped for parts because one serviceable engine can be worth around $20 million. That is the whole problem. The plane looks like the asset, but the engine is the money. A modern aircraft can sit inside a hangar with the fuselage intact, the cabin intact, and years of useful life left. But if the engine is scarce enough, the aircraft can be worth more stripped than flying. Not because the plane is worthless, because the engine is more useful somewhere else. And that changes the entire logic of aviation. The question is no longer only, how many aircraft does an airline have? The question is, how many serviceable engines can it access? Because a plane without an engine is not capacity. It is parked metal. This is not a video about one broken aircraft. It is not about a scrapyard, and it is not just about one engine model. It is about what happens when aviation's bottleneck moves from the aircraft to the engine. Airlines can have passengers. They can have routes. They can have crews. They can even have aircraft. But without serviceable engines, the system stops. And that creates the real question. Why would anyone strip a nearly new aircraft instead of flying it? Why are spare engines becoming so valuable? And why can't the industry simply repair and replace them faster? The answer is simple. Aviation is not only an aircraft business. When engines are scarce, aviation becomes an engine access business. The aircraft is what passengers see, but the engine is what decides whether the aircraft moves. An aircraft only makes money when it flies, not when it is parked, not when it is waiting, not when it is missing the one part that turns metal into capacity. An airline can have the airport slot, the crew, the route, the demand, and the aircraft order. But if the engine is not available, the aircraft becomes dead capital. It still costs money, it still sits in the fleet, but it produces no revenue. And this is where the illusion breaks. The visible asset is the aircraft, but the control point is the serviceable engine. No engine means no flight. No flight means no revenue. And no spare engine means the aircraft waits. That is why a nearly new aircraft can become more useful as a source of parts than as an aircraft. The plane becomes the shell. The engine becomes the value. The real bottleneck is not only building jet engines, it is keeping them serviceable. Engines need shop visits, inspections, specialist labor, certified parts, and repair slots inside a maintenance system that cannot expand overnight. When that queue gets longer, the entire aviation system slows down. A grounded aircraft is not waiting for a sales decision. It is waiting for metal, for blades, for parts, for paperwork, for shop capacity. And every extra week in that queue changes the economics. Supply chain disruption is expected to cost airlines more than $11 billion in 2025, billions in extra maintenance, billions in engine leasing, more money tied up in spare parts. That is what scarcity looks like when it reaches the fleet. And this is why the $20 million engine is not just a price tag. It is a market signal. A plane without engines waits. A spare engine moves. When engines become scarce, power moves. It moves away from the airline that needs capacity. It moves toward whoever controls engine access. Lessors with spare engines gain leverage. Owners with usable engines gain options. OMS and MRO shops become more important because they control the repair pipeline. The airline may operate the aircraft, but the engine ecosystem decides whether that aircraft can fly. That is the power shift. Airlines are used to thinking in fleets, routes, and aircraft deliveries. But engine scarcity changes the question. It is not only how many aircraft do you have, it is how many serviceable engines can you access. Because when engines are available, aircraft move. When engines are missing, aircraft sit. And when aircraft sit, airlines lose capacity. That is the real consequence behind the stripped aircraft. It is not just one plane missing an engine. It is the market revealing where the power really sits. This is where the system becomes clear. The real asset is not always the biggest object. It is the part everyone else needs and cannot replace fast enough. A plane without an engine is stuck, but a spare engine can keep another aircraft flying. That is why the value shifts. The engine can move across the fleet. The grounded aircraft cannot. So when engines become scarce, the market starts treating the aircraft differently. The plane becomes the container. The engine becomes the control point. That is why the aircraft is stripped. That is why the engine gets removed. And that is why a jet engine can become worth more than the plane it was built to power. Jet engines reveal the real structure of aviation power. The visible asset is the aircraft, but the scarce asset is the engine. Money buys access. Access creates dependence. Dependence becomes control. Airlines without spare engines lose capacity. Owners with serviceable engines gain leverage. And maintenance capacity becomes part of the power structure. The aircraft is what the world notices, but the bottleneck is inside the engine. And this is the industry code.